What's going on around the rest of the ACC? Where does Pitt stack up in the conference race? How about statistically? Any Panthers ranking there? What's happening with the offensive line? What's happening with the running backs? What do we think is going to happen this Saturday when Pitt goes to Wake Forest? I got a lot of things to talk to you about and only like 20 minutes to do it. So let's jump into it here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Thursday. It's the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Of course, it's Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to talk about it with other Pitt fans all day, every day. It's right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And of course, our YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. These daily morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday. Our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night. We did that last night at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett get together for a little bit of Pitt sports talk. And we involve you as well in the comments. You ask your questions in your comments, and we answer those and react to others. And then we have our post-game show, which we'll be doing on Saturday after the Wake Forest game. Hopefully get started around 7. Might not be until around 7:30 or so, but we will be live for an hour or more after that game talking about what we saw. And again, you'll be in the chat screen with your comments and your questions, and we'll have a roll back and forth. We'll have a few drinks, we'll talk about the game, and we'll see if everybody's happy or everybody's sad, and it probably will be a combination of both, regardless of the outcome of the game, because that's just how it goes, right? So you don't want to miss that. Make sure you like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Turn on your notifications. You'll get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live, so you don't worry about missing it. Like, we don't know what time the game is going to end on Saturday, so I can't tell you an exact time we're going to start the post-game show. If it goes into a bunch of overtimes, if they just both run the ball a lot so the game ends quick, whatever it might be, I can't tell you a specific time. I don't know when the game is going to end. But if you turn on your notifications, if you subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and turn on your notifications, you'll get an alert. It'll be like, hey, Panther-Lair is live right now. You better tune in because it's the post-game show. Your phone will literally say that to you. I mean, it'll start talking to you, and it'll say, you better tune in because it's the post-game show. That's how phones talk. And you won't miss it. So subscribe to this. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on those notifications. All right, let's look around the ACC real quick. A little bit less at stake this year than there's been in the last couple years. I mean, maybe not even last year, but 2 years ago, obviously we were keeping an eye on the ACC. 2018, keeping an eye on the ACC, watching things around the conference. Where do they stack up? Where are they going to land? You know, could they do this? Could they do that? With 2 losses, as someone pointed out yesterday, they're not mathematically eliminated from the ACC championship game. So keep those hopes up. Keep hope alive, my man. But yeah, we can pretty much count them out of the ACC championship game. Florida State is already 4-0. Carolina, Carolina's undefeated right now too. I think they're 3-0 in the conference. Yeah, they are. Sorry, I had the standings page open and then I closed it. Carolina's 3-0 in the conference. They already have a win over Pitt. So if you're trying to project out the scenarios where Pitt gets into the ACC championship game, and please understand that this entire segment is being said in jest, but if you're trying to play out the scenarios, Pitt obviously needs to beat Florida State to win a tiebreaker over Seminoles and then have the Seminoles lose another game, and they also need North Carolina to lose 3 games of their final 5. They need to go 2-3 over their final 5 because they hold that tiebreaker advantage over Pitt. So, I guess you only need one of those 2 things to happen, right? You don't need both to happen. You just need one of those 2 things for Pitt to have a chance, and Pitt has to win out. And let's set those aspirations aside for a moment, if you will. I think it's interesting to look at how the conference is set up right now. You've got Florida State, Carolina, and Duke all undefeated in conference play. Florida State 4-0, Carolina 3-0, Duke 2-0. Obviously, Duke with 6 games left to play, all conference games. They're going to be running into a gauntlet. We're going to come back to Duke in a second because they're an interesting team and one that could loom large in Pitt's path here over the course of the regular season and potentially even the postseason. Could have a lot to do with what happens when Pitt plays Duke, and we'll talk about Duke in a second. Then you've got 3 one-loss teams. You've got Louisville, who's 3-1, and then Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech are both 2-1, and that right there might be the biggest upset of all. That Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech are both 2-1 at this point. They could both lose out, and I don't think anyone will be surprised by that whatsoever. Both of those teams could be 2-6 in conference play when the season ends, but right now, they've won 2 out of their first 3. Virginia Tech, of course, with the win over Pitt. Louisville sitting at 3-1, having lost their first ACC game of the season last weekend when they came to Acrisure Stadium. Then you get the 2 lost teams, and there's actually 6 of them, Pitt being 1. Clemson is 2-2 right now. NC State, Boston College, and Pitt are both 1-2, and then Miami and Virginia are both 0-2. And Miami, if we talk about Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech being upsets in a positive way, Miami's kind of one of those upsets in a negative way, the fact that they're 0-2. I wondered if that disaster against Georgia Tech would lead them into a slide, and it certainly looks like that might be happening. They might be pulling a Miami here, and the bottom might be falling out. And then you've got the 2 winless teams, or actually, the 4 winless teams, or the 2 3-loss teams is what I should say. There's 4 winless teams. Miami and Virginia are both 0-2. Syracuse and Wake Forest at 0-3. Now, why am I going through all this? Who cares about the other 13 teams in the conference? Why does it matter? Pitt doesn't even play. 8 of them or 7 of them, and they've already played 3 of them. They've got, they have 5 games left to play, whatever it is. I bring it up because it's interesting to look at the path ahead for Pitt. So they have Wake Forest this weekend. Wake Forest is 0-3 in the ACC. They started off 3-0. They've lost 3 conference games since then. Then they go to Notre Dame. That game, that's important, but it doesn't count in terms of the conference. We're just kind of focused on the ACC right here. And then they have Florida State coming to Acrisure Stadium. The Seminoles, clearly far and away the best team in the conference. North Carolina right behind them. Florida State 4-0, top 5 program. It's unlikely that they're going to lose. They host Duke this weekend. I forget what they do the week after that between Duke and Pitt. They go to Wake Forest. Facing a team that's currently 0-3, potentially could be 0-4 or 0-5 by the time that game happens. Then they close out with Miami. They get North Alabama, already scheduling like they're in the SEC, and they play at Florida. So, 4 conference games left. Duke at home, Wake Forest and Pitt on the road, Miami at home. Florida State, could very well run the table. Would not be a surprise at all if they're 7-1. It would be a shock if they go 2-2 over those 4 games, quite frankly. And it would be a real blow to the ACC because it would probably, it would eliminate their best chance at a spot in the playoffs. Although North Carolina is trying to make its case as well. Set Florida State aside, okay? We're going to look at the other 4 games that Pitt's got left here. They've got, as we say, 0-3 Wake Forest this weekend. After Florida State, on the other side of that Notre Dame-Florida State pairing, they've got Syracuse in the Bronx, the Yankee Stadium game. Syracuse currently 0-3. The week after that, they have the Thursday night game against Boston College. Boston College 1-2. And then they finish the season going to Durham to face Duke, who's currently 2-0. Now, Duke is 2-0 in the ACC right now. But 4 of their final 6 games, they have 6 games left. They're all conference games, and 4 of the final 6 are on the road. The only ones that are at home is they have Wake Forest in a couple weeks, and then they close the regular season against Pitt. They go to Florida State this weekend. They go to Louisville after that. Then they get Wake. They go to North Carolina, go to Virginia, and face Pitt. So you've got 2 of the current undefeated teams in the conference, Florida State and North Carolina. The only 2 undefeated overall teams in the conference, Florida State and North Carolina. Duke has to go on the road to face both of them. And in between, they also have to go to Louisville, who looked like one of the best teams in the conference before they lost to Pitt this past weekend. I don't think that's going to be a fall off the edge of a cliff game for Louisville. I think they'll bounce back and play well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them finish at 6-2 or 5-3 at worst in conference play. My point is this. Duke has 6 games left. 4 of the 6 are on the road. 3 of those 4 are against, top 5 teams in the conference in Florida State, Carolina, and Louisville. Now, they do get Wake Forest. They do get Virginia, and they do get Pitt. But by the time they get to that Pitt game, they could very well have 3 losses minimum in conference play, and potentially 4 if they have a slip up against like Wake Forest or at Virginia. And nobody knows, or nobody seems to know, or at least they're not saying publicly, when Riley Leonard, their quarterback, will be back. They're playing with Henry Beelan IV, who completed 4 passes in their game on Saturday. Ultimately, they beat NC State. I think 2 of the 4 passes went for touchdowns, so that's a positive, but not exactly a sterling debut for Beelan. It's going to be a tough path for Duke. I'm not counting Duke as a sure loss. I can't count anything as a sure win for Pitt. But my point is this. Wake Forest, Syracuse, Boston College, those teams right now in conference play are combined 1-8. Duke is 2-0, but they've got a really difficult slate coming up here before they host Pitt in the regular season finale. There are winnable games in here. There are winnable games in that stretch for Pitt. If you look ahead, and I'm not overreacting to the Louisville game, I consider these to be winnable games. I consider the Virginia Tech game to be a winnable game. So it doesn't guarantee anything, but there are games that Pitt can win in this stretch. Can they win enough to can they get 4 more wins out of Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Florida State, Syracuse, Boston College, Duke? To do so, they have to beat Wake Forest, they have to beat Syracuse, they have to beat Boston College, and then they've got to take one of those other games. Notre Dame, Florida State, Duke. It's not impossible. I know we talked about how they're not mathematically eliminated from winning the ACC. This is far more plausible and realistic that they could find a way to win 4 of those games. It's going to be a challenge. Quite frankly, I don't expect them to do it. Call me a doubter, I guess, but it looks like probably too tall of a task for this team with its challenges. But the path exists. And starts this week against Wake Forest. We'll talk about Wake in a minute. All right, statistically, I was just kind of jotting down some notes on where Pitt ranks in the conference statistically. There's a trend here. And I mean, this isn't going to lead to some grand revelation, just to put you in mind of where Pitt sort of stacks up in the ACC after 6 games. Scoring, total scoring, offense, they rank 10th. Defense, they rank 11th. Total offense, or total yards. Yards per game for the offense ranks 14th. Yards per game allowed for the defense ranks 5th. A little bit of a contrast there. Rushing yards per game gained by Pitt's offense, 13th. Rushing yards allowed per game by Pitt's defense, 6th. Passing yards per game for Pitt's offense, 13th in the 14-team conference. Passing yards allowed per game by Pitt's defense, 4th. Passing efficiency, offense, 13th. Defense, 13th. Turnovers. This is an okay one. Offense, 5th. That's not bad. Defense, 12th. Making some moves in the right direction, though, I think, in this last game when they got 3 turnovers. I already did the pass efficiency. I was going to do that one again because it's so bad. Sacks. There's 2 different sack stats here. There's total sacks, and then there's sacks per game, both on both sides of the ball. In total sacks, Pitt's offense has allowed 14. That ranks 8th in the ACC. Defense has forced or accumulated, recorded 20. That ranks 4th in the ACC. If you go down to sacks per game, though, because remember, they've only played 6 games. Some teams have played 7. Sacks per game allowed, Pitt ranks 10th. That's bad. Sacks per game by the defense, 1st in the ACC, 3.33 repeating yards or sacks per game for Pitt's defense. So that's pretty good. Pretty good numbers there. No Pitt running back ranks in the top 20 of the ACC in rushing. No Pitt wide receiver or tight end ranks in the top 20 of the ACC in passing. And Phil Jurkovec, Pitt's leading passer with 818 yards, ranks number 14 in passing yards. Now, of course, he missed half of a game against North Carolina, missed the whole game against Louisville, so we're not going to take that too far, but Pitt's stats, they're not going to be favorable for the Panthers this year. Somebody said, I think people said it on the message board, that basically Pitt is sort of like the Steelers, and they're going to kind of look like the Steelers, and if they win, they're probably going to win like the Steelers. They won a game on Saturday, Pitt did, with 288 yards of total offense. You're not going to win many games when you gain less than 300 yards. Ideally in college football, and perhaps the NFL as well, your goal should be 400 yards of total offense. I don't think this team is really capable of doing that with any kind of consistency. As I say that, I just want to check the stats right now and see how many times this season Pitt has gained 400 yards. I'm going to guess it's 1, and I would be correct. 491 yards of total offense against Wofford, 262 against Cincinnati, 211 at West Virginia, 304 against North Carolina, 273 at Virginia Tech, 288 against Louisville. 4 out of 6 games this season, Pitt has gained fewer than 300 yards of total offense. 5 out of 6 games, they have gained 304 yards or less. That's probably going to be who they are. I don't see a massive offensive explosion coming from this team, but that doesn't mean they can't win games. They've just got to be able to connect a few times. I talked earlier this week and Tuesday, I think it was, and I talked about Christian Veer. You're not going to be able to get by with him completing just 12 passes in a game. It's just not going to happen. You've got to be able to operate with more efficiency and consistency in the offense. But there was a really interesting stat. Pitt is first in the ACC, and let me double check before I say this. In passing, in yards per completion, okay? Passing yards. Yards per completion. Passing yards per completion. Pitt ranks I'm sorry, I was looking at Phil Dracovic is second in the ACC in that stat. In passing yards per completion for team-wise, Pitt is averaging 14.4 yards per completion. That ranks number 18 nationally and number 1 in the ACC. This just might be the kind of team that has to hit those types of plays. And they might not make a lot of consistent passing success. They may not ever really get over 60% completions in a game or on the season. But if they can hit a few of those plays, 60-yard pass to Bub Means, 30-yard pass to Kanate Mumfield, some of the 40-yard pass to Gavin Bartholomew, those kinds of things. Hit a few of those. Maybe it's a recipe for success. It's not necessarily going to keep you on the field for long. It's not going to keep your defense on the sideline for long, partially because if you're relying on those plays, you're not going to be able to sustain drives. You'll also score quickly, and your drives will end quickly. But that might be the kind of offense they have to have. All right. Couple other things. Offensive line, what's going to happen there? I think if Jake Cradle comes back, I think they're going to put him back in at one of the guard spots. My guess would be right guard where he's played before, and then they have to make a decision at left guard if they want to go with Jason Collier or BJ Williams or if Blake Zabovic is available. I think they'll stick with Terrence Moore there. Obviously, your tackles are set with Branson Taylor on the left and Ryan Baer on the right, but I think they'll stick with Terrence Moore at center. They just have to find what spot they want to put Jake Cradle in, and then decide who they want to have as the other guard. Before he played center, he played right guard. So my guess is he would go back to that spot, but then you're going to have to find somebody for left guard, either Jason Collier, who started there and played every snap, played the entire game against Louisville, or BJ Williams, who started at right guard and played the entire game, or Blake Zabovic, who was dressed but did not play on Saturday. There's a lot of options out there, a lot of possibilities. I don't know which one is the best. I don't know if any of them are good, but there are a lot of options if they decide to go with Cradle back at guard moving forward. As for the running backs, I don't know entirely what's going on there. It's been a common point of conversation and discussion. I don't know, why Sebo Flemister got 3 more snaps than Rodney Hammond and a couple more carries and touches than Hammond did in the Louisville game. I can't explain Rodney Hammond's usage. He got heavy usage against West Virginia and Virginia Tech, less I think less against North Carolina, and certainly less against Louisville in this game on this past Saturday. My best guess is that he is still dealing with lingering injuries, and they're trying to protect him. They're trying to keep him healthy by not overusing him. That's all I can really come up with. I think he's still their number 1 back, and I think he can be a good back. I have to back off my prediction that he would lead the ACC in rushing this year. That's not going to come to fruition. I'll have to give up on that one. I got Izzy Abanikanda right last year with the prediction, but not quite sure it's going to happen for Rodney Hammond this season. But I think he's still their best back. I think he's still their number 1 back. I think the coaches still view him as such, and I think they'll continue to try to use him as such, but they need him to be on the field. They need him to be available, I should say. They need him to be available to play, And if overdoing it with the workload leads to limited availability, then it's not, you're not getting the most out of him because he can't be on the field. So that's my best guess with that situation. I don't think they view Sibo Flemister as an equal or better option out of the backfield. I think, and again, this is just me guessing here, they're trying to keep Rodney Hammond healthy moving into the second half of the season. You're going to have to lean on him at some point. I think you're going to have to lean on him at some point. I'm just not sure when that point is. I'm really curious about guys like, somebody like Derek Davis. Like to see him out there more, but it feels like offensive snaps are at such a premium and possessions are at such a premium, and they can't really afford to sort of mess around with anybody that they feel less than whatever level of confidence they have in Hammond and Flemister, just to see what he can do. If it was a more consistently effective offense, maybe you could mix it up a little bit more and get a guy like Derek Davis out there and give him a chance to make a few plays and show what he can do. I'm not sure they have that luxury right now. So we'll see what they opt to do and who travels to Wake Forest and what the coaches do with those guys when they're down there. So, all right, little run around the ACC, a couple personnel thoughts and a variety of things we covered. Of course, tomorrow we'll have our mailbag episode of the Morning Pit. You can go on the premium message board, the Between Fifth and Forbes message board at Panther-Lair.com. You can put your question in there, and we will answer as many as we can of the mailbag questions. So feel free to go drop a few questions into the mailbag thread, and we'll get some good conversation for sure. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. You won't miss our post-game live stream on Saturday or anything else that we do here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for watching this video. We appreciate it. Hope you've had a great week so far. It's Thursday. We're almost to the end of the week. Enjoy it. Have a great Thursday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on the Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.